All right. All right. So, boom. Welcome back to another episode of the Black Caliber podcast. I am here with the lovely Brielle Kimmins, and I'm going to let her introduce herself. But
Hey, that was a nice intro. What's up, y'all? It's Brielle, aka April Fool's Child. Happy to be here.
we're happy to have you. So, first, like, just a little introduction, like who you are. Like, I know you work with her, the Keith Stanfield. You're a flautist. You're also a singer. But what are some of the, but what more do you do? Like, who is April Fool's Child and/or?
Yeah, great question. So, outside of like my artist persona and working in the studio and being involved in music, my purpose is in community, like service. So, getting involved, like doing things like this, being here at Lincoln today, and learning more about, what the next generation is doing, how we're showing up. I mentor kids. So I have a program called CB's Role Models that I do. And
You said it got slow.
yeah, I had a mentorship program called CB's Role Models.
CB's Role Models. Okay.
It's named after my dad, and I've been running that program in a community center in Westchester called the Milton Center. It's for minorities. It's a great community center, and I work with like 4th to 6th graders. Sometimes the younger kids, like 1st grade, but typically 4th to 6th graders. And we use music as a tool to deal with like conflict, gang violence prevention, and just like a creative outlet for them. So
Okay, that's dope. So originally, what got created or sparked your initial interest in music?
well, I think like some things are just innate. Like some things we just do because it's already in us. And so music for me is definitely that. My godmothers were both singers. Both different levels of success, but Natalie Cole and Phyllis Hyman. And I think just growing up and seeing Natalie's success, Phyllis kind of died I was really young. But Natalie had a really wonderful career. And I think that just inspired me, like, I want to do that. Yeah.
Okay, so so you started in, like, at home? Did you start off singing? Did you go to school? Because I know you played the flute, so I assume you were in a band and things like that.
And nerd, yep. And nerd. I played in like concert choir, traveling band, chamber singers. So yeah, definitely like private lessons. My parents saw that I wanted to do music, and so they invested in that. I'm so grateful for that.
And apparently you were really good because you got into Berklee, which is like the music school.
Yeah, but so here's a little tip for people that want to get into Berklee. Do the summer program. That's how I started. Like at the time I was at community college, and I was like, I don't know if I don't know if this major, I was doing like sound engineering. I wanted to just explore, and I was intimidated, to be honest. And then I went to Berklee and I did the 5-week summer program. And I was like, oh yeah, this is my people. I want to be here. And it's also just inspiring because everyone there is like so good. Like practices like 12 hours a day and like loves to do that. And that just makes it easier to get in. So if you're like, maybe your skill set isn't quite all the way there yet, you're still developing, going to that 5-week program and just learning the landscape is helpful.
So if you want to get into Berklee, you got to go to band camp.
Yep.
And so what was that process like? Was it, you said you were nervous, or was it just like you just grinded to the point where you got like, you felt like you were good enough? Or
I think that's a learning curve. Like, I don't think that I felt that I was good enough now. Like being there and being around such talented musicians, and this is just being honest, right? They're talking about like mental health. You're like going through imposter syndrome. You're like, wow, everyone is so good here, and I don't quite know how to do that scale. Or like my sight reading was good, but I think I struggled a little bit with oral theory. So I was like, oh, maybe I don't have that skill. And then you build a confidence over time by just like throwing yourself out there and not being afraid to look stupid, So I'm like, well, one or two things are going to happen. I'm going to go on this audition and bomb it, and they're going to tell me no, or I'm going to get in. And there's been like so many times that I've been told no. And I think it's like the attitude you have after, like the bounce back, right? Like not taking it personal and being like, okay, I'm going to come back and I'm going to do better the next time.
it was actually the event we had, right? I think it was Monday. And the lady said, people were nervous about walking into interviews. You didn't have the job before you got there. What's the worst that's gonna happen? You gonna leave without a job? All right, know what? You know what? That's the crazy. Like, you didn't have the opportunity before you went in there. So what was the worst that's gonna happen?
That's true. I like that.
Yeah, I know. Last minute, I kind of rattled some things in my head. So yeah, I can see that. So once you got to Berklee, what was that? What was that experience like? So now you're in the school. We're in the school of music. Is it like Whiplash? Was it like Whiplash?
Kind of. I mean, so my situation was so different for me. So like, I just never took the roundabout path. So for me, I got into Berklee, and then I went home to take transfer classes at community, because I was like, all right, well, I can take this oral theory class there, and it's much cheaper. So I'm gonna do that. So I go back, I get pregnant, right? And I come from a pretty conservative family, so that was like, that wasn't good. That was no good, you know. My dad handled it very well. My mom, not so much, you know, but we got through it. And I was just like, all right, well, I guess this is my path now. And I took a huge pause. So I just went back and was like, okay, I guess I'm going to finish at community, put Berklee on hold. Because what am I going to do? Like, be pregnant and then have a baby, and then like the father was in Philly. It was like a whole thing. So I took a step back, but I maintained all the relationships I had there. So I was still going out when I could, and like being around and building that network. And then after I had my son, then like maybe like 2-3 years later, the opportunity to play for JoJo came up. And that's when I was kind of going back and forth, right, to LA. So my family and I, like, we all kind of like chatted, and we were like, okay, maybe we should try to like see what it's like to be bi-coastal, see how that works. So I did that, again, taking a huge gap from school. So my journey wasn't roundabout. I think this is also goes back to like telling a story for people that go through the same experience, like starting what you finished. So last year I decided, okay, I'm gonna go back and finish my degree. So it's like a huge gap for me. I went back, and this is my last semester now. And then I'll go to law school in the fall. And I think that's so important, because sometimes you're like, oh, did I miss the boat? You know what I mean? So like being around you guys and you being a student and I'm a student, I may have like the real life experience. Like, I went on tour, I've played for all these people, I know what the industry is like, and that's kind of school on its own. That's like real life school. But going back and finishing my degree, it's so nice to be around like other people who are on like a path, and knowing that no matter how long it took, because woo child, it's been a journey. I'm finishing what I started. So yeah, Berklee's been really great.
So you're going back. You're at Berklee now, okay?
Yeah. So this is my last semester now, which is cool. And then I'll be done. And I was hoping to go to law school this fall, but because of my like credits, I have to wait. So I have like 8 months off, and I don't know, figure out what I'll do with the time off. It's cool.
Yeah. So you said you got the opportunity to play for JoJo.
Mm-hmm.
So what was that like, especially knowing like you just kind of went by coastal? It's like your first, I'm guessing, big break.
For sure. Yeah.
So what were the feelings like, and what were you like experiencing? Like, what were the thoughts going through your head, especially having a kid now and all these other aspects?
I think I was still really naive, because since this was my first opportunity, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm on now. Yeah, they want me. You know, like, I'm being real, right? Like, I'm like, this is dope. No business skills whatsoever, you know? So like, they reach out. So this is actually a funny story to tell. They reach out and they're like, yeah, we want to have you on this project, and let us know your rate. I don't know my rate. I never had an opportunity like that before. I went and asked family who has no music experience whatsoever. They don't know. They don't know what a rate, like, they're doctors. Like, they literally don't know. But I wanted to be accepted so bad by my family, because I took this unconventional path, and now I have a kid. So I felt like, yeah, this is an opportunity to be like, look at what I did. Now what should I do? What should I ask for? And they were like, quote them this. And I'm like, that seems really high. You know, like, I really never done a like experience like that before. So I ended up kind of finding a middle point. We reach out. There was a deadline, and I was in Chicago at the time. So I like wasn't by studio. And so the timing didn't work out. But there was like a number of years that went by, and I was like, did I quote them too high? Like, should I have said this? Should I have said that? And coming back after the fact, now the people in the podcast won't know this, but I played you guys some music with the producer that I told you was part of the reason why I got that call. So like 2 years go by and we reconnect, and he's like, oh yeah, no, it just didn't work out because you weren't around. Like, it was fine. But I learned a lot from that experience because, like, one, you should trust your gut. So I think if I had went with my gut, I wouldn't have had that same lingering thought like, oh, did I say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing? So that's really important, because sometimes you can go and ask someone for something and they're not gonna know. They're not gonna know like you're gonna know, like what's right for you. And that's kind of helped me as well, just continuing to move forward when I get opportunities, humbling myself and seeing the situation for what it is. But it was funny, at the time, feeling myself like that, and then like feeling like, hold on.
So you say you didn't actually get the opportunity to play for it.
I didn't.
So then where did the next one come in, and where do you feel like you took what you learned from that first experience and probably doubled it, or you feel like you just made even more mistakes before you got it right?
A little bit of both. For real. Definitely a little bit of both. I just, so after that point, I'm like, okay, I'm definitely not going to ask my family again. I do not need their validation. Like, God put me on this path for a reason. I'm going to just trust my gut. And also, like, find people that have already been doing this and see what they say. So I started thinking about, like, if an opportunity would come up, if it was just like, okay, I'm going to be a session musician, it's just get the flatbread. Sorry. Like, if I was just going to be a session musician and get the flatbread, then I would do that. And that would be cool, because I'd get paid up front. It wouldn't be as much, but I just, if we would know that this is a situation, I'm just getting paid to be here to play. Let's see, maybe the next opportunity after that, they offered me a rate without me having to ask, and it was good. And I also got royalties, so I'm like, okay, cool. So it was like, it's a learning curve, really.
So when do you feel like you kind of figured it out? How long you take before you realize, like, all right, like, you can say I'm a professional, like, I can come in and I know exactly what I need to do? Or do you feel like you're still learning?
I think we'll always be learning, like, depending on how big the opportunity is, honestly. But I think I have a much better scope of, like, my worth. And because, like, the more things I've done, my resume is there. So I can, like, my ask is different. But probably over the last, I would say, like, 2019 is when I started to feel like, okay, now I have a gauge of, like, what I can ask for and where my leverage may lie. But I'm going to always be learning, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are some, like, are you have any particular stories that you might want to share in general?
Sure.
Because you were giving something there, but it's a little different.
That's true. Let's see. Let's think of a story. Okay, so I had an opportunity to play Coachella, and that was really cool. I think that was a moment where I was like, okay, a little bit of leverage, and also great opportunity, very humbling. So I'm there, and I knew Mac Miller's DJ, which rest in peace. And so we're all hanging out. We're like backstage, we're chilling. I got hired to do the Playboy tent, and it was G-Eazy's event. So I guess essentially, like, I don't know if he directly hired me, but whatever, it was for his event. But we're hanging out, we're all eating in the green room area, and this white guy comes over, he sits down, very unassuming, and he like offers me food. And I'm like, no, I'm good, I just ate. And then like an hour goes by and the same guy is on stage. And I'm like, wait, is that G-Eazy? Like, I was like, whose manager was that? Had no idea it was him, like, the whole time. And then I didn't realize as well, like, oh, he hired me for this event that's happening tomorrow. So that was kind of interesting. And then just getting to be there. It was the same year that Beyonce was there. So that was a really cool moment. Like, I'm like, there's levels to this. I got to perform here. I get to be here and watch her perform. And I feel like that was a really legendary moment for her. And then obviously just for me, that was a really cool time.
Yeah, and you also were talking about how you used to be at gigs with your son.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that was, does he ever tell stories or bring anything like that up? Like, I remember we was there.
No, not really. Not really, but I know I did a gig one time with like Dice Raw from The Roots. He did a play. It was like a hip hop musical. called The Last Jimmy, and it was in Philly. It was like when the Prince Theater opened. And that was interesting because he was really young and I had to bring him with me. And I felt like I was still really young in my career and not really knowing like what that would have been like to, like bring I'm like, is this going to mess up the opportunity for me? Like bringing the kid with me, but I brought him and we made it through. He was in the rehearsals and he came to the show. And I think that when we're on our path, like at that time, I look back at that point in my life and I think about how much I was in my head, like being very young with the baby and like not seeing that reflected in my peers and feeling like, again, I missed the boat. And so like of course I'm bringing my kid because I'm going to do what I have to do. But in my mind, I'm thinking about like, are they going to invite me back? I'm going to get another opportunity. Like, is this going to like work out for me? And I think it, in the outside looking in, it was like, she is willing to do what she has to do to show up, and I've learned that along the way. And I'm grateful that my situation kind of panned out the way it did because it helped me build some character.
Yeah, I ain't gonna talk about it a lot on the podcast, like, especially being young. And like with me, a lot of the places I go and things like that, I'm almost always the youngest. So it's a very unique experience, but definitely coming to learn that you're supposed to be there. You're worth it. Things like that are really great. And that you feel if you weren't supposed to be there, you just wouldn't be there.
Thanks.
So, I think that's really dope. But also now that you're stepping into, well, at least now here, you're stepping into teaching the music business. And if I wanted to get started and I'm sitting at home watching, what would you tell me if I wanted to kick off my music business or in this business in general, this whole artistry?
So we briefly touched on it in like the event, but understanding the landscape, like the environment that you're walking into, like who are the people you should know. And it might be like, locally, like start there, but understanding that, looking into like doing your research as well into like, say maybe you don't want to be an artist, but you want to be an A&R, or like you want to work in promotions or event coordination, whatever it is, looking for those people in your radius who are doing those things already and just kind of like looking through what they're doing, because that's going to help you at least get a blueprint together. So I think that's really important.
So first we get the blueprint.
We're getting the blueprint. Yes.
All right.
Then we're understanding like the basics. We didn't get to touch on this too much, but like, what's your setup? Like, okay, I have this budget, right? Is this realistic for me? Like your budget is always going to probably be smaller than what you want to do. Figuring out what you can do with that little budget and getting the very basic things you need to make it happen. So like the podcast, the mic, something to record into your headphones. So for an artist, I have a very chill setup at home. I work out of a studio, but at home I just have like my laptop and my headphones. I got my mic, my interface. That's all I need, and you don't need a camera. You can have your phone. You can do so much with your phone, like, and record like visuals and audio. So yeah, having the basic equipment, the blueprint, the basic equipment, and then consistency. Like once you make the content that you're seeking to make, pushing it out, like strategizing, pushing it out, like not just dropping things here and there and being like sporadic with it, but being serious about the brand that you're pushing and consistently putting it out.
So I remember earlier you said you have like 7K monthly listeners. So how did you even go about growing and acquiring that in general? Especially somebody who's trying to grow listeners myself. How are you getting in front of those people and making sure that they come back for more?
Great question. Well, first, consistency. Like having like they know like, okay, music is coming, something is coming, so they'll look for it. Also, playlisting I think is important, and I think this can fall into your vein as well. Whether it's like user-generated playlists, which people kind of overlook that because you want to be on editorial playlists, which is great, but editorial playlists change every week. So that playlist is not like, it's not going to sustain. But user-generated playlists, normally, like if you're thrown into a playlist with a bunch of other popular people, you're going to get those random collection of listens and new followers through there. So that's a really great way to sustain. How else have I reaching out to my network. So some of my friends do playlisting for other people, and I'll just, send them new music. So keeping in touch, communicating. If they like it, they'll throw it in, and it pulls in more people. Doing live shows, a lot of the times it's going to be the same core fans that you have, but I feel like they'll bring new people with them, or if you're going to a new state, you're going to meet new people, and having that like mailing list newsletter kind of thing we talked about, dropping the new songs in there. And it's like passive engagement almost, but it's definitely happening. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? Yeah.
Okay. And I'm actually about to have to go to class, and
Hey.
so I know, right? College student, but right. So last thing, just anything that you want to tell anybody watching in general about life, any quotes, that, and also what books are you reading? So I guess I should ask that one first. What books should you be reading?
That's a good one. Okay, books. There's a book by, I believe his name is Matthew Richtel, and it's called The Science Behind Creativity, like understanding creativity. Excellent book. Highly recommend, 10 out of 10. I'm reading a book right now, I'm finishing, by this woman named Joyce Myers. It's more kind of like specific book, but it's about it's called Living Beyond Your Feelings. I think that's great for anyone who's trying to go into a field where they have to deal with people day to day, like understanding rejection and dealing with people, talking to people. And then anything I would want to say to people is, be focused on what you're doing. It's really easy to look around you and be discouraged, and feel like when you're focused on someone else's journey, you're missing the where you're at. And sometimes you don't celebrate those micro wins. So I think it's just important to keep going, be consistent, and know that you might get there late, but you'll get there. But Morgan Freeman was 40 when he made it. So yeah, just stay on your path. It'll happen.
All right. And with that, can I just get you to say this is the Black Caliber podcast?
Sure. This is the Black Caliber podcast.
Oh, she put her radio voice on. That was dope. All right. Thank you.